This presentation will be on Madison, Washington by Chris Frankie McGarvey. Washington was able to overthrow the crew of the Creole ship in 1841. The Creole was on its way from Richmond, Virginia to New Orleans, Louisiana with 135 slaves. This was called the coastwise slave trade, and this was also 20 years before the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation era. So many slaves to gain freedom had to run north or to other places that were under British law like Canada so they could claim their freedom. So who was Madison Washington? He was a strong leader who escaped slavery not once, but twice. He escaped to Canada, but was captured a second time when he was looking for his wife, Susan. Not much is said about his earlier years, and nothing after the rebellion, but that does not mean he did not leave his mark in history. Many articles talk about how he did go back to Virginia and such, or not Virginia, but how he went back to America to find his wife Susan. A lot of articles collaborated with that. Many say that he did end up finding his wife, but many also said that it was kind of romanticized that he did end up finding his wife. So I really hope in his case that he did, because he deserved it. Mutiny. On November 7, 1841, Washington and 18 other male slaves rebelled, overwhelming the crew and killing John R. Hewell, one of the slave traders. The ship's captain, Robert Ensor, along with several crew members, was wounded but survived. One of the slaves was badly wounded and later died. They took overseer William Merritt and made him navigate the ship to the Bahamas, which was under British law. They originally wanted to go to Libya, but William Merritt said they did not have enough food, water, supplies to make it. So a former slave mentioned of precedents of a former slave revolt on a ship a year before, and how they also gained their freedom by going to the Bahamas. So they were welcomed immediately, and most of the slaves were now free. 5 of the slaves stayed on the ship, and this was theorized by one article, and many other articles also provided that 5 of the slaves stayed on the ship, but they didn't provide a reason why. But the theorized was because they were still in hiding from the revolt, and they didn't know to come out. But not much is said, but that is unfortunate because many were freed, and those 5 weren't. But so what happened to Madison Washington? Well, murder was still a punishable offense under British law, so Washington and a dozen other men were contained. Especially Admiralty Court was heard and ruled in favor of the men. They gained their freedom in April 1842. This was 1 year after they were captured, and I'm glad that they were also able to gain their freedom too. They were not expedited back to America where they were going to be worked to death. The United States citizens were protecting the release of the slaves, but British ruled them free under law, so they did not budge under this protest. So they were able to gain and keep their freedom. Even though the slaves had every opportunity to kill every slave trader on board, only one mention of this event is talked about. They only wanted their freedom, and the United States did not see them as free, so how else can one gain freedom besides rebellion? And that's something that I thought was really interesting. They had every opportunity to kill every person on board out of either vengeance, out of revenge, out of anger, frustration, because they knew someone or they had a family member affected by this. But no, they didn't. They just wanted their freedom, and they just wanted to be left alone. And every living thing has a right to fair living conditions and fair treatment, and I think that's something that is true. That should always be true and never ever change. So what happened? So like I said, nothing really was mentioned after the Corral or the Bahamas, but many stories and legends came about from this one moment. One iconic story was called The Heroic Slave, a heartwarming narrative of the adventures of Madison Washington in pursuit of liberty and the liberator. The Heroic Slave was a fictitious story based on Madison Washington himself, talking about the recapturing of himself, the Creole Revolution, and the Bahamas, but I guess with his own spin and his own personification of the whole thing. So this was also the most successful slave revolt in United States history. One year earlier, there was another revolution, but it was only 83, where this one was 183, 135. So 50 more than the previous. So this is my works cited, and I hope you learned something from my presentation of Madison Washington. He is a great man. I'm proud that he was able to free those people. Not many people had that opportunity or that freedom. So I'm glad that he did.